Today we're going to take a look at the third part in a 20-part series of correlating the periodic table, amino acids, and the ancient 20 days. When you put the 84 primordial elements, I had to subtract the ones that were not primordial in order to make it work, and then it all fell into place beautifully. But the 84 primordial elements instantly correlate with ancient timekeeping systems, and the amino acids also fit in there. It is important to note in the leading to this video that there are 4 quadrants, and there's air, earth, fire, and water. Now, the way these are determined, at least by me, is the bordering of each quadrant by that element. So in other words, the air quadrant is bordered by an air day on the lead side, and the ending side is an air day as well. So it begins and ends with an air day. That quadrant has 2 air days in it. All the rest of the quadrants have 1 air day in them. And today we're going to do the water quadrant. And this is important because this is the human quadrant. The previous 2 videos of tyrosine and xenon, those are in different quadrants. One was in the earth quadrant, one was in the air quadrant. This one is going to be in the water quadrant. In the water quadrant, there is a day called Kawoq. This is the 9th day of the 20 days, and it is what I would call the most magnetic sign, or the most magnetic day for the attraction of the 5th element, which is evenly spread throughout across the board of this, is the 5th element, goes all through this, and it's just the way it's portrayed. And the universal symbol for that is simply the spiral. And that is basically you could call it the spiritual molecule. You could call it whatever you want. You could call it the chi. You can call it, I call it the spirit element, the 5th element. And Kawoq, for whatever reason, this day has an unusual, among all the days and the decans, any other little hexagon you see in that image, Kawoq has this the strongest. Now, that's not to say that these people that are born on that day are super spiritual people and they need to be listened to on these things. That is not what I'm saying at all. By the end of the video, I hope you understand that it's just this anomalous thing that kind of shows up. And it speaks through a multiplicity of facets, functions, qualities. A lot of it is in the function. And in the, also just, while I have this on the screen, the 84, when you correlate the 84 primordial elements of the periodic table onto this calendar system, this is multiple calendars, but this is the way they correlate because there's 36 decans and there's 20 days, that's the next ring. Then there's the 12 sun signs, that's the next ring. And then there's the 8 masters, that's the next ring. And then the 4, and then the 4. So what this ends up doing is forming a 4-quadrant toroidal donut, toroidal donut, that follows the Fibonacci sequence from the center moving outward. It's a 2-dimensional static image. Probably best viewed through 3-dimensional, but there it is. And let's move on. This is the evidence of a unified field theory. I think that's what I would call it. You can use whatever you want to call it. I'm not married to a name of it. the same set of vibrational or electromagnetic, whatever forces they are. I'm not alleging any of that. I'm not talking about causation. I'm not going to discuss it. I have no idea. That is completely out of my field. I didn't make any of this stuff up. I don't write the meanings of the amino acids. I don't write the meanings of the days. I certainly didn't write any of the functions and come up with any of these elements. None of this is my work. I just take existing things that are already set and put them together. Now, and when we're talking about doing the 20 days and the 20 amino acids and the 20 primordial elements, we are talking about tin through ytterbium, primordial only. And they match perfectly. So that's what's going on. It's a function thing. They match with function, similar shapes, products, all these things. Okay? Here's the list. As I said, I've already done the number 5, which was zikine, cysteine, and xenon. And I've also done number 19, sorry, toj, tyrosine, and thulium. Now those are 2 of the more difficult ones to match up, but they actually are pretty, even the worst ones have these undeniable carryover characteristics and functions that move through all 3 of those systems. So people can do with that what they will. This is what's going on. This is what I'm showing. Now, in the ranking difficulty, I ranked them. I didn't really want to do this. It was kind of hard to do because I had never thought of that. But I thought, zikine was kind of, it's ambiguous in the days. It's not, xenon is not ambiguous, and certainly cysteine is not ambiguous. And there was a lot of stuff going across there, but I had to check a lot of science, and it was, so I'm ranking it the most difficult out of that because I had to learn about that science. I mean, we're talking about the birth of the nuclear age coming out of that. So, and toj, very simple, very easy. That wasn't bad at all. So that's number 17. This is number 5. This is one of the easiest ones to do. And it's, in my opinion, if I'm correlating across 3 systems in a 20-part circle, if 3 of them are dead ringers, and these aren't even the easiest ones to do, 3 of these are dead ringers, they can't be moved. So you can't move cerium, you can't move histidine, you can't move any of these amino acids or elements out of this circle. They're all going to match perfectly. And so, but just doing 3 of them, and I've already done all 20, but I'm saying presenting 3 of them, hopefully start to get a lock inside that circle where you cannot move those. So if you've seen all 3 videos, or if you watch all 3, just those 3, it's going to be harder and harder to deny. This is going to be, as it builds and you get all 20 of these, it's going to be absolutely undeniable. Now the 9th day is Kawoq. It is it's symbolized by the turtle. Now I don't think that the turtle, because there's a lot of different kinds of turtles, so I wouldn't necessarily go with a snapping turtle. I'd go with the sea turtle. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We'll get into that. One of them is, because along the way you build these crazy examples, but it just gets verified over and over and over. But it is the turtle in general. But if I had to pick, a person, like if I had to personally say, hey, okay, which turtle best, epitomizes this day, I would probably go with the sea turtle. But it is all turtles. It is known as the gift of voice, the sacred expression of words, and the persuasion in water, voice, and verb, and all these things. The peculiar thing about it is that we can check and test with all of these systems is that in nature, Kawoq survives rains and floods. Now that is a very interesting, no other day says anything about that, but on this day, it is being alleged that this day survives rains and floods. Not necessarily people born on this day, but on this day, there are weird things that happen, and I'll show you the examples along the way here. The other peculiarity is it's related to bots. Now, there's only 2 other days that say they are related to each other, and that was Toj and Kot. Now, the amino acids for those 2 days are phenylalanine and tyrosine, and those are definitely related. And out of all the amino acids, that is a prominent feature of tyrosine and phenylalanine. So there it is. And it's also, I'm going to show that it's a prominent feature between histidine and alanine here, because here it is in this system saying this day is related to this other day. And then when you look at the amino acids, we're going to see that that amino acid is definitely related to that other amino acid. And so other important thing, very, very, very specific. This is a cleaning day, good for smudging the home or purifying the environment with cedar. Purification. So that's a very interesting, just those lines right there. The body parts are listed as the heart and the nervous system. Keep this in mind as we go along. Energy from pine trees and coniferous trees. I mean, that is just that. Let's just stick with that. We've got survives rains and floods. Artistic, like music and paint, that's fine. Good, it's cleaning. This is one of the primary functions. This is where it gets into the function, is cleaning. Smudging the home, purifying the environment. Body parts. Now, these descriptors that I use on this site, I got in person along with 20 other people, and was back in 2008. We were visiting a trio of Mayan elders, and they called in the day specialist from the Kawoqish tribe, and this was from Don Alejandro, the head of the Mayan elders there, and that's who came and did this for us. It took all day. It was an 8-hour session just to give us these descriptors, and we all wrote them down. I've checked with other people to make sure that, and I've also been back there to make sure and check. I want to make sure I'm not writing anything down that isn't something that they told me, and it doesn't matter about the, I just want to make sure that this is something they've handed down orally, according to them, for 6,000 years, and here it is. And then we just watch and see how it matches up. But the body parts, heart and nervous system, pine trees and coniferous trees. Okay. Now this is the correlated, because that's day 9. Kawoq is day number 9 of the 20 days. Then the first 20 I Ching hexagrams are also the 20 days, and day number 9 is hexagram number 9. And what we're first going to see is we just look at the glyph or the hexagram itself. There's one broken line, that's it. So it looks like there's a little hole in there, doesn't it? And that's very Kawoq. Notice that right off the bat. And the first thing we're going to talk about is rain. The other name for Kawoq, by the way, is rainstorm. You'll see in other systems where people call it the day of, they name it. It's not named Kawoq, it's called rainstorm. So it has a very close association with clouds, rain, water, all these things. And in the I Ching, right off the bat, we see dense clouds, but no rain coming. And then in the end, when we bump down to the bottom, in line 6, we see the progression where the rain has now fallen, and the onward progress is stayed. So we value the full accumulation of the virtue, which is abundance. Rain brings abundance, it cleans everything. And then line 4, there's this interesting little tidbit there. The danger of bloodshed is thereby averted and is ground for apprehension dismissed. There will be no mistake. Now that's very interesting. So, and there's there's a lot to dig into with the I Ching. I'm not going to get super technical about it, but that is the gist of the hexagram, is that the actual descriptor of this hexagram is about dense clouds but no rain. So they're pointing out that the dense clouds are coming. Kawoq also follows the day of lightning, so that's why that one is number 1. That's the easiest day to do between these 3 systems, because in all 3 systems, that number 8 position is absolutely undeniable. It locks them all in. That's the only one you need to do. But from the descriptor, it talks about rain, and the moistening the ground is the cause of beauty and luxuriance. So it's pretty unusual for the I Ching to talk about those things in that way. Water is generally, not talked about that way in any of the other hexagrams. And so there's that. There's the I Ching. It agrees. It agrees. And so now we're looking for the danger of bloodshed thereby averted. We're looking for some rain. We're looking for some clouds. And we're looking for some the rain and all this. Yes. So the commonality between these 3, the Histidine, Cerium, and the 9th day, Kawoq, is cleaning and sacred expression of water, voice, and verb. Now, the image to the right is the image of, when you have these dense clouds, but then there's a break in them, and you look out and you see this ray of light coming down. This is often what many people consider to be the most sacred expression of the sky god, right? This is, people look up and say, wow, that's, that's just, it's a crazy visual that immediately renders the idea of, what we call it God, right? It's a beautiful moment. It's a hole in the clouds, isn't it? So for smudging, people use, on the left is sage. The people use white sage, but they also use cedar. Cedar is a material that is burned in a sacred fashion for cleansing, as it said in the descriptor, for cleansing the environment. That is pretty universal throughout all of the indigenous tribes that I have, looked at. Every single one uses sage or cedar, the coniferous trees, or the sage. They all do this. And it's all very meticulously, identified. Like they know exactly what that is. That's universal language among all tribes of people that I've seen. Wouldn't matter what part of the world they're in. The Cirrus, the planet, or it's a dwarf planet named after, it's the same name as Cerium, right? And it has this one very interesting characteristic, and it has this little light spot on it, and everybody goes, whoa, what's that? What's that light spot on that planet? And so that's actually like the most identifiable feature of that planet by the same name. So I just thought, well, okay. And it's an object. I don't know if it's a planet. It's a dwarf planet. Yeah, dwarf. I think it's a dwarf planet in the asteroid belt. Whatever. It's a very well known planet. Call it a body in our solar system, and we have pictures of it. And there it is. Got a light on it. In wine, histidine and alanine are in combination there. That is the most common amino acids in the red wine, right? There's a relationship between alanine and histidine in the wine, and that is the clump of grapes is in many of the Mayan glyphs for that. And the plump, juicy berries, I think, are universally just plump, juicy berries is a very Kawoq thing. So certainly fermented grapes are definitely in there with that. Cerium is also used for lighter. So there's a very close relationship between fire, air, and water in this group right here that is very consistent. So cerium is used with lanthanum also to for these pyrophoric qualities, and also lighter flints and this and that. Cerium is also used for cleaning. Histidine, of course, makes histamine, and histamine affects every system of the body. but the number one thing that most people might recognize is that it is the precursor to histidine. Histidine is the precursor to histamine, and histamine affects every system of the body. It is our healing. That's our healing chemical. That's what gets us going. That's what gets our immune system going. And water, when we're talking about our immune system, and we're talking about the application of the correlation between histidine and Kawoq and cerium, well, there's no way you can get around the different things that are all together there. Even the respiratory and the cutaneous, it's your skin, your gastrointestinal, the cardiovascular. It's just every system is affected. But the heart is an important one, because what do we do with wine, red wine? Now, I had a friend of mine got quadruple bypass heart surgery. This is the surgery where they break your sternum and use this crazy tool to spread your rib cage apart. And they get in there with I don't know what they use, a wire brush or something, and cut off your arteries and clean them out with a wire brush and sew it all back together and slop the ribs back down on there and give you a few stitches up the chest. And then he sent him home after that, and said, you have to drink red wine every day. And that was his medicine. I couldn't believe it. I said, you got to be kidding me. He said, yeah, this is what he told me to do. So that's what they did. Now, Albrecht Kossel and Sven Gustav Hedin, they are the ones who isolated histidine. They are both born, they were not born on Kawoq, but they were born on the two primordial elements that border the water quadrant on either side. And both of those elements, chlorine and bromine, are the activity of water purification. The prevention of disease is what we're talking about here when we're looking across the spectrum. So again, Kawoq, the commonality, the main factors: smudging, coniferous and pines, white sage, healing, purifying, rain, wine and grapes, abundance, and it's related to bots. Cerium is used for self-cleaning ovens, catalytic converters. Cerium and tin oxides are used together. It's rare, but they're gonna get there. These are the UV light filters for the water filtration, right? And this is standard equipment in Europe now, is the UV light purifiers on the water. It just kills all the bacteria as the water passes through it. So it's used for water purification. White light. Cerium is used for in the most commercial white lights, like with phosphorus. They mix that and it use it together, and it's integral to the white light industry. Polishing glass, they use it for that. It's also cerium, and here's this little fire relationship. The fire relationship with Kawoq is the burning of the coniferous or the smudge, right? You start it on fire and you get that smoke. So there's a little bit of a relationship here between smoke and clouds, and there's a relationship between the fire and the cleaning process. But Cerium is an antimicrobial for burns. I've used it on, I had a second-degree burn on my leg. I've used that. It's like a white cream. And of course, Histidine has all of these other qualities, and it's related to alanine. And it's, I forgot to subtract some of my notes. I'm definitely keeping the bots reference because I didn't want to expound on what bots is and all the qualities of that and why it's, in relationship to alanine. But we'll get to that one. Just to stick with Histidine, Cerium, and Kawoq. So just some visuals. Histidine or histamine, when your histamine is activated in your body, what happens? You start expressing from every orifice you have, except maybe the ears. But if you have an ear infection, you're going to get that. But your eyes are watering, your nose is running, you're coughing up stuff, maybe you got some diarrhea working, you're sweating, right? You get a fever, so you get heat in the body, and you get all these reactions when your histamine is unleashed upon your system. So there's a lot to do with fluids when we're talking about histidine and histamine, aren't there? So, and the image of a dragonfly grabbing onto a stick for dear life in the middle of a rainstorm, I just thought that was a very Kawoq thing. For Cerium, well, it's a wife saver. Here's what we got to do. This is hilarious. These commercials from the old day, when self-cleaning ovens came out, what was the best selling point? Well, apparently with this company, we can get her, she's wasting her time cleaning the stove. We got to get her over there doing all those other chores we gave her to do. She has to get back in the kitchen, get those kids clean, everything, clean everything up, blah, 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 blah. But the oven will clean itself, and it helps her clean by cleaning itself. Look at that pitch. That's great. It's hilarious. But that is Cerium. They use Cerium in the lining of these ovens so that when all you have to do is turn the oven on, and it's basically just turning it on and making it real hot, and that Cerium just sheds all that gook and gets it off of there, and that's how the self-cleaning oven works. It's really, people still use them, so it's a thing. So don't forget, Genesis follows the Tricinas, and the Tricinas are the 13-day periods of these days. So in chapter 6 is the Tricina of Kawoq, and we're talking about the guy who's going to survive the rain and the flood. It's not the flood. It's not the flood. The flood doesn't happen in chapter 6. Chapter 6 is only dealing with, we're going to pick this guy, and we're going to get his kids, and we're going to get all the animals, and we're going to save a few of everything because there's a flood coming. That's what it's about. Make a boat and save some stuff. And there's actually, you'll see, I got examples of this in real life, like that just happened. So it happens. That's what it's about. So it's not about history. Okay, that's not a historic thing. Noah, you might as well call it Kawoq. And even the ages of these people, when they're going through there, Noah lived 800, 900 years. That's about how long it is as a day in the calendar, in the processional calendar. A day, when we're talking about sun signs and decans, the decans are about, right around 700 years for each decan. Well, a day is just a little bit bigger than a decan because they happen simultaneously. And the days are about, give or take, around 1,000 years. So you end up with, out of 20 days, you end up with a 25,000 year cycle. So give or take, some of them are a little longer than others. Some of them are right on, and some of them are average. Some of them are a little short. But, so that's what that is. And it sticks out just as plain as day. Now, so that's chapter 6. That is the Tricina of Kawoq. It follows in sequence right along. There's not just throwing it out there. That happened. That's where that ends up. Exodus number 9, because Exodus follows the days by chapter, not the Tricinas, not the order of the Tricinas, but they do use the Tricina in the chapters, but each chapter is the day, next day, next day, next day. So Exodus 9 was Kawoq. It's the 9th day. It's the 9th chapter of Kawoq, or it's the 9th chapter of Exodus. And there it is. What's in that chapter is a grievous hail, thunderings, and rain with fire. Okay, so period, end of story. Case closed. The previous chapter was the frogs. Those are T-Hawks. So, I mean, it just goes right along. It's so simple. It's incredible to me that that's not taught. I know I'm not the only one that knows that. Anyway, let's get into the artists of Kawoq, because here we're going to start seeing the shapes of things. When the artists get involved, then we really can fine-tune these glyphs and start seeing exactly what comes out of the human soul when they search it deep enough and beat themselves against a rock after consuming 15 bottles of whiskey, and this is what they come up with. And Osamu Noguchi is by far one of the best examples. He's got his own, museum here in the United States. Good friend of, I think he was buddies and pals with Buckminster Fuller, these kinds of people. But here are the things that he makes, and they all have a hole in it. Okay, so we look at these holes, we look at the spiral, we look at all these things, and we begin to see the same geometry play out over and over and over and over. The other things he's really famous for are these giant fountains. That's the most Kawoqish thing I've ever seen any artist ever do, are these giant squares with just constant water pouring out of them. It's incredible. And he hides, it's amazing how he suspends them and has all that water flowing. It's just a massive abundance of water flowing out of these fountains. And on the bottom right there is the picture of his decan. He was born in the 3rd decan of Scorpio. This is the only thing that even remotely has anything scorpion-like out of the entire sun sign. I don't agree with that animal being used for that sun sign at all. In fact, it's really not even close. There's no scorpion in Scorpio. I don't know, some guys must have came up with that and they like it, but when you go to verify that, I don't find it too much. I do find in the 3rd decan of Scorpio the lion. And there's the lion. That's lion decan. So it's not even in Leo. Leo has a lot of bears. I got a video on that, bear video. The bear video shows you that there's a ton of bears in Leo. There's a few lions, but mostly bears. There's a lion in the 3rd decan of Capricorn. There's a lion in the 3rd decan of Scorpio. And there's a lion in the 1st decan of Leo, but otherwise mostly bears. These sculptures that he made are excellent representations right out of that decan. And that's how these images are done. It's through repeated artistic wrangling of the mind and what's coming into it, and filtering it and refiltering it and polishing it. And so he got very close. It's the turtle-mouthed lion, and his sculptures depict that very, very well. And there's even the combination where he put a hole in the center of the thing. And the hook on the tail of the lion is the only place where I see anything scorpion-like. So there's a hook on the tail, but I don't really regard that as a scorpion thing. It's a hook. It ends up being a hook. And it shows up in other places too. There's tons of other guys who picked up on that and put it in their art. And I don't think they saw these pictures, so I'm not suggesting he saw this picture. These pictures are kind of hard to find. I don't think they were floating around. I don't think so. Maybe. The number one Kawoq performance in modern history, without question, there's nobody even close, was Prince. He was born on 12 Kawoq. He is an avatar of the day of Kawoq. And he did a halftime show at Dolphin Stadium. Kawoq is right adjacent to Dolphin decan. That's the 1st decan of Scorpio, and Kawoq is right there. So But this is, hey, I'm just saying, this is what happened. He did his song, Purple Rain, in a pouring down rainstorm at the Dolphin Stadium, and it was in the Trecina of the actual flood. So in the Bible, in time, the flood is not in Kawoq. At the end, the rain comes. Well, why is that? Because E is the next Trecina. And the Trecina of E is actually the one that says the water that covers the earth. So in the general sense, it's meant as like the streams and the dew and the moisture of everything. And that's what E is. E embodies that. It embodies the path that the water cuts through the land. And that is the following Trecina from Kawoq. So it was right at the end of the Trecina of Kawoq, and it started in E, and so it started pouring. And I'm going to put a link in the descriptor. There's a small documentary where they talk about this entire performance and describe what happened, because it was a crazy thing, and it was an amazing performance. I haven't even watched a halftime show since that. I'm just not even interested. There's no way you're ever going to top that. But the apparatus on his head precisely matches the glyph of the older depictions of the days in the Borgia, what they call the Borgia Codex. That's actually a codex that the Catholics stole it, took it back to Rome, and actually Don Alejandro went over there, tried to get it back, and said, "Hey, could we have our codex back?" And he's like, "Yeah," and he just smiled and walked away. The Pope did this with Don Alejandro. He's got a picture of it. The Pope smiled and walked away when he asked for that back. They don't want to give it to him. No, it's ours. And they burned all the rest, by the way. So you'd think, boy, if they were, gonna, ask for forgiveness, boy, that'd be the first gesture they do, is like, hey, we saved this one codex, you guys can have that. Sorry about burning all of your stuff. But no, they didn't do that. But that's because this is the medicine people. That's why people call that, oh, that's the witch doctor with the bones tied on their head. Yes, it is. But look at it's also, there's geometric reasoning for it. And you see here where Prince, not only is he wearing the perfect colors for Kawoq, he's standing in the pouring rain with these lights coming down on him, and he's singing Purple Rain, his signature song, right? With his personally designed guitar. It's just everything about this man is art. Everything about everything that was going on there was art, and it's a timestamp also. So that's the number one Kawoq performance, in my opinion. Now, there might be some others. I haven't seen them all, but that one definitely checked out. This is in the Maya, they actually call, because this is the healers, the medicine people. So there's all the different names for Kawoq. They call it Kawoq, and then there's the different spelling of Kawoq. And then there's the storm, the rainstorm, or the thunder. It's not lightning, because the previous day is lightning. And it's feminine. But that's the name of the Maya Health Alliance, is Wuku Kawoq, because the people born in this day are also known as great healers, medicine people. So that is elders, these kinds of people come out of this. So, and that is very true, and that's a good thing to know in your society or your group of people, whatever it is. And that's what they do. So this is some events. We're going to go through some quick events. This was a year ago not quite a year ago. It was about almost 260 days ago, or a little more than 260, that I started doing this video. And so I grabbed these examples because it was like, wow, look at this, I got to do this. I got to do this one. Look at this stuff that's happening right on the first day of this Trecina, because it's one Kawoq. And the dam, the Kakova Dam, over the Dnieper River during the Russian War. Now, I'm not suggesting who did what or anything. I don't, cares about causation. That's what happened. That was a big that was the dam broke. And when you have a berry that's ripe, and when it, even when you're picking berries, they're so ripe and they're so fragile that when you pick them up, you get juice all over you, don't you? Because you just can't help it. That juice just expresses out of that berry with the least amount of pressure. And I think that thing was already damaged or something, and it gave out on one Kawoq. Whether it was intentional or whether it needed more help, I don't know. But that's what happened. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty Kawoq-y thing. What else is going on today? Well, it's also the day that the entire country of Canada started on fire, and the smoke from the coniferous trees wafted across the entire Northeast, and it was all in the news and everything. Oh, there's going to be smoke in the air, and they're talking about air quality. And I said, hey, if anything, this is a beautiful, I know the indigenous people were thinking the same thing, but I was just watching this going, this isn't a bad thing. We're being smudged. The western half of the United States or the eastern half is being smudged. And it wasn't a horrible smell. I think there was one day when I think a lot of the houses were burning. Seemed like we got a whiff of that. But the rest of the time, no, it smelled like beautiful coniferous tree smoke, and it started on one Kawoq, and we got smudged. So I don't know how you wiggle out of that as far as a Kawoq event, but there it is. Now, 260 days later, which was just the other day, which made me get back into this, I said, well, I get up in the morning when I do these things, because I don't need to wonder if anything happened. I just need to go see what it was. And that's how this is done. I don't look far. I don't have to look hard. You just wake up, go click through a few news sites and see what's going on, Well, there's a horse named Lucky. And 40 firefighters came to rescue the 20-year-old female horse named Lucky. And because the horse was stuck in a muddy hole. And it's a white horse, which is like, some kind of emblematic, it is an emblematic color for a horse, for any animal really, is when they have, if you see the albino bison, that's right. So there's all kinds of interesting things associated with that, but whatever, it's a horse, it's stuck in a hole. 40 firefighters. I mean, these round numbers are just amazing. 20-year-old horse. Come on, it's the 20 days. It's like an example for the 20 days. And then there's the number 20 and there's the number 40. Because that's Exodus chapters too, right? It's 40 days. That's the way you teach it, most of Exodus is ruined. You take about from, I don't know, chapter 13 or 14, throw the rest of it out. It just needs to be redone. But that's the way you teach it, is you teach the 20 days by going twice round to make sure that you're traveling through the decans a little bit so you can see the difference in these days. And that's the initial teaching, the way to do it, if somebody's, into that. But that is, yes, the horse named Lucky being rescued by 40 firefighters, by the way. This is exactly 260 days, which is one calendar round in the 260-day calendar, precisely back on that, what we call the same day as the smudging and the dam breaking. We have this horse being right. It's not a big story, but it is an interesting one. You don't see that every day, and that's the kind of thing you look for. Is like, well, I don't see that every day, and that is the antipodal tarot card for the Day of Kawoq. The other one is that guy with the lantern. The Day of Kawoq is actually number 9. Is the guy with this lantern. The tarot's not that well done, but I don't know. That is the antipodal animal kind of from Kawoq. So there is a connection there, and it's the sun and the abundance, these kinds of things. But that I thought that was interesting. But there it is. Best example of an event like that, somebody actually surviving a rain and a flood, is Annie Edson Taylor, she went over the Niagara Falls in 1901 in a barrel, a wooden barrel. If you ever been to Niagara Falls, you have to be insane to want to go over that in a wooden barrel. I'd want, I wouldn't even do it. I don't care what you put me in, it wouldn't matter. But a wooden barrel, that's, you just imagine that's just going to hit the rocks. I mean, there's rocks there. But she made it. And she was in there with her lucky heart-shaped pillow on the day of Kawoq. And it was on her 63rd birthday. I don't think she was born on Kawoq. She was, I don't remember what her actual birthday was, but, it would have been 63 years before that. But I didn't check her day. That day that she went over the falls is to Kawoq in the Tracina of Tehox. Tehox is the waterfalls, and Kawoq is the survival of rains and floods. So she went over the waterfalls in the Tracina of the waterfalls and survived on Kawoq. So that is just a crazy combination. I could go on. I could do an hour and a half just talking about all the amazing synchronicities that exist in that story alone, because you have to explain a lot of things to see them all. But there it is. That's the number one example. This is a list of scientists that I found that are all born on Kawoq, and I thought it was a very interesting list because they all seem to fit these characteristics and traits and, idiosyncratic peculiarities of the Kawoq, Cerium, and Histidine concept. So James Clerk Maxwell, his mother's description. Most of these I take from their wiki pages. Like, I don't try to go find any bizarre stuff. It's just, who says what about this person or what did they do? That's all I try to look for. Just look for, get at least one basic thing that jumps out. Well, on James Clerk Maxwell's page, and, the guy's got all kinds of stuff going on, but his mother's description, I thought, wow, they're gonna let the mother chime in on what he was up to. And she was talking about he investigates the hidden course of streams and bell wires, the way water gets from the pond through the wall. I said, oh my god, that's so Kawoq. Okay, that nails it. And this is in the primal beginnings of him. So Otto von Guericke is actually a predominant figure in the history of cloud physics. I mean, you can't, right? Can't make that up. He first started investigating the concept of vacuum through the use of fire pumps by pumping water out of wooden barrels. That's Otto von Guericke. That guy, I think he also, he did some other stuff. Yeah, he's big with clouds. He's the one who did the first, he theorized that the clouds are made out of little water bubbles. That's one of his things. Roger Penrose, he's an interesting guy, mathematician. When I looked at him, I don't understand a lot of the stuff that he does because I'm not a big into the mathematicians. I don't know a lot about that, but I thought it was very interesting that his firm position was physics cannot explain consciousness. I completely agree with that. He also inspired an artist, Escher. Like, that's one of the few major scientists of our time that inspired a major artist of our time. I think that's an interesting connection. When we're talking about the arts, we're in Kawoq. It's very, very Kawoq-y thing to do. He also, well, I'll show you in a second. I got some visuals on these guys. Robert Bunsen, okay, he named two elements, rubidium and caesium, and he named them both colors, which caesium is blue. It's made, blue, but caesium is the first water day in the water quadrant. That's the bordering one of that. Rubidium is Aries. That's the fire. And he named it red. And that is the absolute correct color for that time. So when you overlay the periodic table, when I say these things correlate instantaneously, I'm not kidding. It lands right on it. The colors of heated materials, red and blue, very Kawoq-y. Thomas Burr Osborne, he discovered vitamin A, and that is a very important thing because vitamin A deficiency claims the lives of 670,000 children under 5 annually. It is the #1 preventable cause of blindness is just giving kids vitamin A. It's incredibly preventable. I mean, this still doesn't get enough play. I think that's a current statistic. You can go check it, but I don't remember where I got that, but I thought, wow, that's a lot of children. Are you kidding me? Where are all these kids? Like, can't we just send them some vitamins? But I don't know. Every time it seems like I've looked at vitamin A, they always talk about how, this is one of the world's biggest problems. It's the most preventable thing we can do, and nobody's doing it. It's a bizarre thing. But Thomas Osborne, he independently discovered vitamin A. So he gets a Dr. A+ for that, right? That's an A+ for a doctor in Kawoq. That is what their job is. He fulfilled his function. Bots is related to Kawoq. Yes. James Clerk Maxwell, purifying water with UV light. And I also looked into these UV light filters. I thought, wow, that's an amazing new technology. It's got to have some kind of connection. Well, sure enough, they use cerium oxide all the time for these UV light filters, water filters. But there is a combination of tin and cerium, so that can be used. It's rare. I don't know, there's something about it that's a little difficult, but I'll bet you anything that's where it's going. So if I was to advise any investors, I would say, you know what? That's a winning combination right there. I'd stick to that and get to perfecting it, because that is probably going to be a very good way to filter water on demand with cerium and tin. Roger Penrose, yeah, this is his visual, because he proposed critical mathematical tools to describe what? Holes. see, these three things are all about the holes, right? There's always talk about holes when you're talking about Kawoq. There's always holes. And even Roger Penrose, he ended up, in the jungle of mathematics. You wouldn't, but there it is. It all led to describe black holes. And Bunsen, the emission spectra of heated elements, yes. And he made his little burner, yes. But there's the combination of fire and color and, medicine man making, in the laboratory. I mean, there's a lot of laboratories that in medicine that use these things. Am I right? I mean, so this is a medicine man who fulfilled his function in a very Kawoq way. For sure. So there's the science examples. I wanted to point out about the commonality of the animals between the air days, because now bots is the monkey, a few other things. You've got bats and raccoons down there and bots. But the second air day is undisputably known as the eagle throughout every culture that has these 20 days. Everybody agrees. That's the eagle. The turtle and the eagle, I think, are very similar in geometric appearance and also in how they behave, how they look, right? Our attraction to them as sacred. We move to protect these eagles. Now, if somebody gets caught killing one of these eagles, you're going to get your name in the paper and everybody's going to hate you. Well, it's the same thing with a sea turtle. If you kill one of those sea turtles, people are going to go after you. This is happening in Hawaii right now, where there's beaches that they didn't used to get, or they haven't had sea turtles for a long time, and all of a sudden the sea turtles are coming back. And they got to kick everybody off the beach, and the people are like, oh man, we lost our beach, but hey, these are sea turtles, you can't mess with them. So there's a commonality between the sacred observance of these particular animals in these two concurrent air days. Kawoq being in the water quadrant, the sea turtle that is in the sea, he swims and looks like an eagle. It's the water eagles is what I call them. And during the oh, this is a great one. The Texas power outage. I've got a video about it. You can go look at it. It ended up that happened on the day of electricity, right before Kawoq, in the Tracina of the electricity, I think it was. But right on the day of T-Hawks, on the day of electricity, is the day the power just went out in Texas, and boom, everybody's freezing because of this massive cold front. And the next day after that was Kawoq. And on that day, you didn't hear about the power anymore. Well, you heard about the power, but what was really going on was there was hundreds and hundreds of people with trucks and all kinds of everything just rushing to save all of these turtles that might freeze. So they're grabbing all the turtles and they're bringing them inside. They described it as the single largest turtle rescue event in history, and it happened on the day of Kawoq, and it was these turtles. So that just goes to further my point. That wasn't the first time I thought of that. The sea turtles are an obvious choice for Kawoq, and the other reason is because of the way the young hatch. Okay, think about it. Survives rains and floods, right? You're this little baby turtle. Your first day, right? Your first day alive. You have to fight your way out of the sand, get across that sand and into that water as these waves are just crashing on you, flailing. You're just going on. I mean, there's nothing more helpless looking than that. But they survive. So there you go. So got big respect for the turtles. And that's why that's the animal, I think. There's a lot of reasons for it, but there you go. Now, we're talking about Kawoq and Histidine, the guys who found histidine. One was born in chlorine, which is the third decan of Virgo. The other one is born in bromine, which is the second decan of Libra. But bromine is not located there we have to take these four and put them outside. So I think that deserves an explanation. Just like the order of the amino acids. Why is it that I'm using the alphabetical order? Well, that's the self-forming order. I didn't do that. The scientists didn't do it. It just ended up happening because of the alphabet. And the alphabet is a self-forming system. So they can't argue with one breath that you don't have any free will, and in the other breath say, no, that's stupid. It couldn't possibly happen on its own. they can't argue with both of those things. So I don't worry about it. Forget what they say. It doesn't matter. There isn't a chemist in the world that would agree with me on this because they're trained to look at this broken table of the periodic table. They're not trained to look at it. Why shouldn't it work with all these other systems? Why shouldn't these things be similar? Why shouldn't they understand and follow the same sets of rules? Why shouldn't they happen in the same sequence? Why shouldn't they do all these things? Why shouldn't it be beautiful? How about that? That's my big thing, is I look at the periodic table and it's like, that's an ugly piece of garbage. There's no artistic value to it whatsoever. Somebody's got to do better than that. I mean, really? This is what you're showing people? This is what you're, these are the materials that make up all things. And this is your presentation of it? It's ugly as sin. It's wrong. It's broken. They can't even fit lanthanum in there. Come on. You guys broke it. If you knew about lanthanum, then you know right where it goes. It goes right after barium, okay? That's right. It goes right after barium, and you keep it in its place because that's where it belongs. And look, it ends up right next to scandium in Tower. So that solves that little problem. I mean, it's just ridiculous to just grab this part of the table, bring it down here. That's why I call it broken. It's a broken piece of ugly garbage, but we're going to fix it. And I think this is the first step. I'm not saying this is the end-all, be-all, but I think this path is correct. And, so it's a lot of work to check all this stuff. But the four floaters, there's in every set of the decans, the 36 decans, because bromine and chlorine are not in the 20 days. Those are in the decans. Those are in the set of the first 36 elements, primordial elements. And in every set of the 36 decans known across the earth, and there was a lot of them, the there's always 4 that are taken out of sequence and listed at the end, except usually the Hindu keep them in that continuous sequence, but they label them, make sure that everybody knows. They call them like 4 warning decans, and I don't know, that's a translation. I'm not sure if that's what they meant. You could also call them the outside or the inside decans. In this particular formation, I found that the best place to put those, and they fit right where they go, is right where I put them. So selenium's at the top, bromine's in the east, and arsenic's in the west, and krypton's at the bottom. And those belong in those 4 quadrants because these are floaters. These float across these quadrants in all these systems. And that's just the way it is. So we have a whole series of bromides, don't we? So yeah, there's that's a long explanation, but I wanted to clarify that the guys who isolated histidine border the water quadrant in this system, and they're both born on elements that are for purifying the water, healing it of harmful bacteria, just like histidine does. So the reason why originally, when I looked at the first 36 decans and I started correlating them with the periodic table, the correlation was instantaneous for like the first, 15 elements. And I said, oh, man, look at this, right? And I had never looked at the periodic table before. I learned all these days and decans and all this stuff way before that. So by the time I got to the periodic table, I was like, well, let's just see, And man, they started correlating instantaneously all of a sudden. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is even ending up. And I said, wait, where's the 30? So I wanted to jump to the end. When I jumped to the end, this is what I saw, was this table here that shows the bonding. Now these colors, this color code here is for the bonding of simple substances, right? So they give these guys different colors, like metallic, and then there's, oh boy, I forgot. I had my notes. My notes are supposed to be showing up here, and they're not. These are the different bonding types. Now, the way it was listed when I first got it, and here's the image, so I can show you. Arsenic, selenium, bromine, and krypton all had a different color because they all were the first 4 elements that I came across, and they just happened to be at the end, and they just happened to match in function sequence with those 4 decans that are the outside decans. And they were all for the first time in the periodic table where you have 4 different bonding types in a row. The rest of them, here and there, and you could check it. But these were the first 4 that were a completely different bonding type in a row. And I said, wow, that's amazing. That's a crazy little piece of something to stare at there. And so I started looking at that. And wow, it made all the sense in the world. And so I wanted to point out, where are these things? Now, these are the Hindu drawings for those 4 decans. The Egyptian representation is the 4 sons of Horus. So that's what the Egyptian representation is. There's the selenium is jackal decan, and there's the jackal. So it's not the god of death. I don't know. Forget everybody who says that stupid stuff. I swear to God, Egyptology is so corrupt. I don't know what to even, I don't know. Blah. Then there's the baboon-headed happy. Now, happy is a female, but they use a baboon-headed happy. Why is that? Because wagon decan is an outside decan that belongs closer to bots. And why is that? Well, because bots is the jack of all trades. And happy, the second decan of Aquarius, is the Industrial Revolution. And that's how it worked out. That's how it works in all universal time and anything that is manifested from these sequence of energies of whatever causation. It works out. So there's that. And the same with jackal. It has to be up there at the top with selenium. Selenium belongs up there. And then there's Imseti, which is the, and there's body parts that go with these guys too that are, they're okay. Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. The body parts are pretty good. Imseti is yogi, so that's arsenic. And there you go. So there's in the Egyptian, the green one is the arsenic, the selenium is the white one, and krypton is the yellow one, and bromine is the brown one. And in the Maya, this is another image from that same representation in the Borgia Codex. It shows the 32 decans. You count those little stick figures sticking out, right, in the circle. That's the 32, and then they show the days around those. So this is a representation of the combined calendars of the 20 days and 36 decans. It's one out of many. Everybody had this stuff, okay? But then inside, so they put the 4 figures on the inside, and they used 2 bird-type figures and 2 snake-type figures, okay? And they got them that way. And I don't have a problem with that. That's their culture, that's their representation, but that is what it is. So, and then on the upper right is the, from Tikal, there was a stone called Altar 5. It's not an altar. It is a 32 decan calendar, which would be an accurate 32 decan calendar with the 4 inside. And you can see there's glyphs there. I've got it underlined with an arrow to it. That was the Mayan stone for the 32 decan, showing the 4 inside. So in every system, the 4 are inside, just to clear that up. Self-forming systems do not rely on your input. You can argue about it all day long. It's not going to matter. The daughters in the abundance, you shall not drown. That is the conclusion of the whole thing of what's going on here. You shall not drown. Your lungs won't fill up with water if the histamine does it properly, because that's what happens with ammonia, right? If you get ammonia, if you get real sick and you can't fight it off, then your lungs fill with water and you drown, doesn't it? So histidine actually helps you from drowning probably several times in your life. Everybody, right? Anytime you get some kind of lung, right, fluid, it's helping you. It's expressing your eyes water, all of these things. So yeah, it's the cleaning, healing, sacred expression. That's across the board. Histidine, Cerium, the day of Kawoq. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Can I do it? Can I talk?